Good afternoon, members. We have a quorum. It is also time to start the meeting. Today, we have arranged for 2 meetings to deal with the items on the agenda. After the first meeting, we'll take a break of 10 minutes, and the second one will start at 5:25 p.m. Just want to remind members that if members have a pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in any items before us today, please, in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures, disclose the nature of interest before you speak. Please also note the provisions under Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedures in relation to voting in matters in which you have a direct pecuniary interest. Items FCR 2014 to 15, 31A to 34A will continue our deliberation of the items deferred from the meeting held on the 14th of November. We'll continue to have a joint debate in relation to the 4 papers concerning the 3 landfill extensions and the IWMF, and then we'll vote separately. I don't intend to introduce the attending public officers individually. They are familiar to us. Since 3 weeks ago, we started the discussion of the above-mentioned 4 papers. 31 members have asked questions. I will just follow the previous practice. That is for members' Q&A. The first 2 rounds will be 4 minutes each, and third and fourth rounds 3 minutes, and the fifth round and thereafter 2 minutes each, including replies from the officials. Just let me remind you once again, in relation to the questions raised for a particular item, it has to be directly related to that paper. For broader policy issues, you may raise them at a LegCo meeting or the relevant LegCo panels. You shouldn't repeat what you have been saying or others points. We have already vetoed the motion moved by 3 members under the FC procedures so as to adjourn the discussion of the 4 papers. In accordance with rules of procedures, I do not allow further motions of that nature. On the 1st of October, 7th of November, and 14th of November, at our meetings, we also dealt with the motions moved by 3 members to adjourn the meeting. In total, we spent 7.5 hours for discussion, another 4.5 hours dealing with the 7 motions. In accordance with the FC procedures, in particular, paragraph 37A, I've already received from Mr. Gary Fan in relation to paper FCR 2014-1531A. 5 motions. I will wait for the ending of the joint debate before I put the motions to you one by one, confined to those that are in order. For motions moved by members in accordance with paragraph 37A, the content should only involve 1 agenda item, say, for example, FCR 2014-1531A, which is Southeast New Territories Landfill. If it involves more than 1 item, I will rule that it is not in accordance with the rules of procedures, it is out of order, and I will return it to the member. After you have dealt with a motion raised under 37A, I will then put it to the vote, and then I will invoke the same procedures, and in accordance with the sequence on the agenda, I will deal with the remaining 3 agenda items. Now we start with the questions. Mr. Ronnie Tong, Mr. Gary Fan, Mr. Chairman, in accordance with Rule 83A, I would like to raise a point of order, and I would like to seek your ruling. This is because in the Apple Daily today, Land Justice, an NGO, has found that for the contractors and the developers of the 3 landfills, they are closely related to 2 major developers, that is New Land and also and I want to know whether we can ask a question about the sort of very low charging rate for the construction waste dumped at the landfills. And then for the tar cooling landfill, it is called Far East. And then it is being held by a subsidiary company of New World. Mr. Abraham Sheck is a non-executive director of New World Development. And for Chung Kwan O Landfill, the operator and the contractor is also a company held by a subsidiary of New World. And then for Mr. Ng Leung Ching, who amazed us with his skills to chair the meeting, and in fact he is a executive director of Smart Tone. So please make a ruling. I think Mr. Abraham Sheck and Mr. Ng Leung Sing, in relation to the landfill extension items, they have direct or indirect pecuniary interest. But then, for almost 8 hours in the previous 4 meetings, I don't think I recall any declaration of interest by the 2 members. So I wonder if the 2 members should refrain from speaking when we deal with the landfills and IWMF and don't vote in such matters. You refer to 83A, Mr. Gary Fan? Yes. Well, in fact, almost a minute ago, I tried to read it out again, and that's in relation to direct or indirect pecuniary interests of members. It is up to members to make a judgment themselves, and it is not up to me to make a judgment. So it's up to members to judge whether they have a direct or indirect interest, and it's up to them to make a decision to declare or not. So I don't think we need to continue with this discussion as to whether they should declare or not. It's up to them to say whether there should be a declaration or not. Mr. Chairman, it is quite like what happened in May and June this year in relation to the advance funding for Northeast New Territories. Well, at the time, it was also Mr. Ng Leung Sing who was queried as to why he had not declared some potential direct or indirect interest. It caused an outcry, and then there were queries as to whether the funding vetting process of the FC of LegCo was far from fair. So please ask the 2 members why they had chosen not to declare their interest. Mr. Gary Fan, I don't think we should waste our time. You may have your reason to believe whether what I'm saying is the same or different from what was said a few months ago. I think we should just look at Rule 83A. It is up to members to decide whether there is a need to declare or not. It's not up to me to judge whether there is a need to declare or not. So it's in the hands of the members. Mr. Tong, I think the Secretary would understand why the funding request has been met with so much opposition, in particular from Chung Kwan O residents. Now, for the administration to get advance funding, I think to a certain extent it is like taking it first, taking the second best first. But then I think the government has already caused a loss of confidence in the minds of the residents. I think this is quite similar to the relationship between the pan-democrats and the Beijing Authority. When it comes to the relationship between administration and Chung Kwan O residents, the Sen would never dare to go to Chung Kwan O, in particular near the landfill. Well, as to why this has happened, well, for a long period of time, the administration has said publicly that for the Chung Kwan O landfill, it has a limited lifespan. However, it has been time and again been extended. Residents have been concerned about the odor. They have been concerned about the litter. Residents have been complaining about that for many years, but they haven't seen any visible improvement. Yes, you're saying that it will just take up construction waste. There will be more cleansing, and then the rubbish left in the car park will be the subject matter of prosecution. But we haven't seen any effects. Now the Sen is coming here to ask for our approval. So he's simply saying that we should give the money first, and then we can wait for an improvement later. Some residents have also said that for the transfer station at Kowloon Bay, the operation has stopped. And then for Southeast Kowloon, we haven't got the construction of the refuse transfer station being built. So it is quite likely that even when we approve the funding, 3, 5, 8, 7, 8 years down the road, the Sen would come back again and ask us to extend the landfill in Chang Kwan O. I think this is most unfair. My question for Sen, I think perhaps at least he should consider that in the case of Southeast NT landfill, you should shelve it for a year and then try to find out whether your existing practices are working and give us a clear account about the latest status of the Southeast Kowloon refuse transfer station, so as to convince us whether there are enough facilities and sufficient capacity to deal with the refuse and to deal with the waste, so that residents can have their minds put at ease. I think if the SARG agrees to defer the funding request concerning the extension of SENT by 1 year, at least on my part, I'll be willing to support the government's move. Sen. Chairman, Mr. Tong, on different occasions, we have already said that it is very imminent in relation to the 3 landfill extensions and IWMF. For SENT, I think the greatest concern is odor. And in fact, we have taken up the matter seriously. And once we get the funding, we will amend the law to say that it will only receive construction waste, and we can tackle the problem of odor fundamentally. Second round, Ng Sing for 4 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just now I was about to queue up to ask a question, but then Mr. Fan raised a point. It's a repetitive point. It could also be regarded as a frivolous one. I don't know why he would like to make such a point. Everybody has already declared interest. So for members to take it up again and for newspapers to take it up again, I think, Chair, I agree totally with you. That is under Rule 83A. We know what is meant by interest, what should be registered, which would be a conflict of interest. For others who won't declare, so I think, dear Fan, I think you should find time to identify whether there is genuine conflict of interest, including his allies. Now, the operator and also the handling of the waste are not financial issues. They should have been taken up elsewhere. Chair, I think you would be lenient with me, and so I want to ask this question. Now, after giving approval, I want to know if an operator has got a legitimate means to bid for the contract. I want to know whether it would certainly include the companies named by Mr. Fan. Is there any guarantee that they will get the contract? Now let me go deeper into the issue. How many contractors or operators, potential operators, have shares issued and owned by members here? Now, all of us here are all generating waste. Whether we are waste or not, I think it's up to each of us to consider the issue. Now, for landfills and IWMF, it's about handling of waste. So whenever waste is involved and we need to make a declaration, does it mean that everybody has to declare interest? Mr. Chen. Well, the current operators of the landfills, they have got the contracts after the proper tendering exercises. For the extensions, again, we will identify the contractors and operators through the usual tendering process. Ng Sing. I have always wanted to ask this question. I want to ask about the financial issues in this item. If I may ask you to turn to the following page. Paper 31A. It's about the public sector building and construction output for the period 2015 to 2024. I understand that for the extended scent, only construction waste will be allowed. My time is up. I will reserve it for the next round. Sen, please take note of his question so that he doesn't have to use another 2 minutes to ask the question. Warren Tong, 4 minutes. I don't think Sen has answered my question. There were 2 issues there. First of all, whether Sen would defer the extension of scent by a year. If not, please tell us about the technical difficulties. And then he hasn't really answered my other question. That is, I hope that he will specifically address the reason why Southeast Kowloon Refuse Transfer Station has not been completed. I hope he can give a more specific question concerning the refuse transfer station. Then, for the station, my colleague would supplement. Now, for the 3 landfills, they are the facilities to handle the waste in Hong Kong. If they cannot be extended in time, the overall environmental hygiene of Hong Kong will be affected. So for your proposal of deferral, I think the tendering and extension works cannot tie in with our schedule, and then our environmental hygiene will be jeopardized. This is totally unacceptable. Mr. Chairman, about the refuse transfer station, in the eastern side, it is quite inadequate. We have selected a few sites and we have met with opposition. Say, for example, the one suggested for Chakoling. We are considering whether we can make use of the caves and whether we can build a smaller scale one in the new areas so that we can have it partnering with the one in Tseung Kwan O. I don't think my question has been answered. Please be specific. For the refuse transfer station, it is quite obvious that you are lagging behind. You haven't even identified the site. Now, I want to know about the impact. What about the impact on Tseung Kwan O residents? Please explain this. For the sense reply, I'm quite unhappy. I'm not saying that we can't deal with it next year. As the Sen has said, we have got other initiatives to reduce waste at source. I don't think that come next year we have got refuse accumulating on our doorstep. So can the Sen try to respond to the aspirations of the local residents? Dr. Chen. Thank you, Mr. Tong, for your question. Well, for Tseung Kwan O landfill, in future, construction waste only will be allowed. And then for the municipal waste, they will go to West Kowloon, Sha Tin, and the 2 refuse stations on Hong Kong Island. Secretary, for those 3 landfills, the capacity will be exhausted in the years 2015, 17, and 19. So we need to seek extension. If there is to be a delay, then some of the landfills will have to suspend their service, and then the effectiveness will be eroded.
Well, Chairman, the administration still hasn't answered me in detail. In the short term, the RTS cannot be built. So what is the impact on the long-term treatment of waste? Are we going to rely on other refuse transfer stations for handling waste? Or is it really an appropriate way to treat waste at RTS? He hasn't answered. He talked about what happens now. I know what is happening now. In fact, Mr. Tong, he has answered you, but you're not happy with his answer. Dr. Chan, perhaps you can repeat your answer. Thank you, Mr. Tong, for your question. Now, you may note that in this council, we have explained a number of times in detail the diversion plan. That is, in future, only construction waste would be accepted at Changfanlo Landfill, and the diversion plan is for this purpose exactly. Some refuse transfer stations have reserve capacity, and some FHD vehicles would also be deployed away from these refuse transfer stations, and they would be able to handle MSW of less than 2,000 tons. Mr. Ng Sing. Well, I asked my question just now, but I want to declare, first of all, because of the polluter pays principle, I am one of the polluters. I also generate waste. Now here, in para 12, based on the assumptions on the trend rate of change in the prices of public sector building construction output for the period from 2015 to 2024, and then in para 13, the annual recurrent expenditure will be reduced by $22 million after its commission, and then, in accordance with the polluter pays principle, the capital and recurring costs arising from the project will be considered when determining the fees and charges. Now, my question is whether there is any ballpark figure in relation to the capital and recurring costs, and what about depreciation? Will that be taken into account? Dr. Chen, thank you, Mr. Ng, for your question. Now, the annual recurrent expenditure at the moment is about $200 million. But in future, since only construction waste will be disposed of at that landfill, we anticipate that $22 million can be saved. So, does it mean that fees will be increased in phases? Because ultimately, users pay. So will there be a trend to, will there be an upward trend? Well, yes. Although construction waste will be accepted only at the landfill, we also need to consider whether we should adjust the relevant rates. What about depreciation? What is the period involved? Can you tell me the details? That is to say, the facilities will be used for quite a long time. So the calculation for depreciation will be different from other building facility or construction facilities. Maybe I'll defer to Mr. Lau. On the construction or other facilities depreciation, we follow the same method. So how many years? For concrete structure, the depreciation period is about 30 years. For other facilities and machinery, 15 to 20 years. Mr. Ng Sing, any follow-up? In para 12, you mentioned the period from 2015 to 2024. That's quite a long period of time, so some 10 years. In relation to the prices of public sector building and construction output, do you have the figures regarding the annual rate of or trend rate of change? Dr. Chen, we don't have the figures at hand, but the FSTB does have the figures. We can supply them afterwards. Next, Dr. Kwokaki, fifth round, 2 minutes. Chairman, Mr. Ng Sing understands himself very well. Well, according to your performance last year, some may question whether it should be disposed of at landfill or whether it should be incinerated. My question is, as Secretary, from August 2013 to now, how many occasions have you been able to meet with residents? I have yet to receive any written reply from you. Second point, that's about construction waste. at present, it's charged at about $25 or $27 per ton. However, the cost is $125. Disposal at Taisan, $70. That means we are subsidizing contractors for the costs involved in disposing of construction waste. Well, it costs $70 to have the waste transported to Taisan. So why are we subsidizing contractors? Why are we subsidizing them per ton? Dr. Kokaki. On the 23rd of August 2013, in relation to the waste management facilities at Chek Koo Chau, the administration already listened to deputation's views, and that's in paper number FC50/1415/02. Chairman, it's not just about Chek Koo Chau. It involves Tuen Mun, Tseung Kwan O, and Northeast landfills as well. My question is, does it mean that they're all zero? Nothing has been done. In the supplementary information given to the Finance Committee, we set out our meetings with deputations or residents in other landfills. Please go back to the queue and wait for your next round. Mr. Gary Fan, 10th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, I think your way of handling the issue under 83A was improper because you rely on the self-discipline of members with direct or indirect pecuniary interest to make their declarations of interest. But according to the rule, those with conflicts of interest are forbidden to even speak. I'm sorry, I have to respond to you. I'll give you time. Yet, yes, if you don't use your time to question my decision, I could tell you why instead of using your time. Well, 83A is about members declaring their interests by themselves. I cannot restrain members' rights by asking whether he has anything to declare before he speaks. So that's your interpretation. You rely on members to make declarations themselves. The chairman has no role to play in it. I already told you my interpretation of 83A is that members should declare interest. But where does it say it? A member shall not move any motion or amendment in relating to a matter in which he has pecuniary interest, whether direct or indirect. Where does it say on the members' own initiatives? At every meeting, I explained the same. Yes, but that's your interpretation of 83A. I ask members to declare their interests. I do not request them or mandate them to do so. No chairman may know on any particular issue whether a member has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest. Chairman, even if your argument could stand on its feet, my question is whether chairman has a role to play in determining whether the member has a pecuniary interest, direct or indirect in it. Whereas for 83A, my understanding is that a member shall not move any motion or speak on any such matter where he has a pecuniary interest. Well, Mr. Gary Fan, I have made my ruling. If every time you have to question my ruling in your own speaking time, then that's your problem. Well, I think this is improper and I have to speak out. I have made my ruling. The member is responsible for declaring any direct or indirect pecuniary interest. I reiterate, that's because you have repeatedly questioned me. Dr. Kokaki, 6th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, this is outrageous. The paper says after August 2013, Tseung Kwan O residents never had a chance to meet with the secretary. He only attended Sai Kung District Council. My question is, when he had a direct dialogue, when he directly consulted Tseung Kwan O residents who were affected, and he could put up the same excuse, I think it was outrageous. Back to my question about the costs and the fees and charges. Mr. Chen. Thank you. Now, on the charging scheme for disposal of construction waste, it was implemented in 2006. It not just covered fees for public fill banks. Different types of construction waste would be charged. At landfills, it would be charged at $125 per ton, and at RTS, $100, and for public fill banks, $27 per ton, according to the prevailing costs. In fact, the scheme seeks to encourage waste generators to use public fill banks because the public fill could be used for reclamation. That's the purpose of the scheme. The scheme has been in place for many years, and it's time for us to review the charging schemes. We hope to recover costs. Well, Chairman, well, there is still a gap from your scheme to the waste charging scheme in future. Why aren't you charging fees at a level which can recover costs? Apart from construction costs, C&I waste and domestic waste are also covered. We're doing a review covering all these types of waste. Mr. Albert Ho, 10th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, the administration is now considering extending the Tuen Mun landfill to 200 hectares, covering a very wide area. Secretary, in the past, there were problems of environmental pollution and hygiene in the Tuen Mun landfill. And the latest problem is flies. There were occasions in which flies, lots of flies gathered in several villages, and it really affected the livelihood. And some experts came out and say that it had nothing to do with the landfill, but we were worried that animal carcasses had not been covered properly, and the leachate also caused water pollution. So my question is, in your study, have you looked into this issue? This area is so big. How can you guarantee that the management can ensure environmental hygiene? Dr. Chen. Well, on the problem of flies, we also are very concerned. So all along, we have been consulting our FEHD pest control experts. Last year in March, in Northwest anti-landfill, we installed 7 fly monitoring stations with adhesive straps to attract flies, and we were able to attract 20 to 30 flies. And according to the FHD, if the level is 300 to 400, then we should really pay attention. So far, the situation is satisfactory. Dr. Kwokaki, back to the incinerator, Chairman. Now we see that waste would be treated and separated before they are sent to the incinerator. Now the government is adopting a very non-scientific method, only by separating waste only by visual inspection. Will that cause a more serious pollution to the environment? Because this is not in fact separation. Secretary, well, this question has been asked repeatedly. We encourage recycling for the purpose of saving resources. It has nothing to do with reducing emission. So how are you going to do it? Because you said that the waste would be separated before it is incinerated, and you're just saying that you have answered my question, so you are not going to answer anymore, despite the fact that the waste separation is done very poorly. Now, the policy is that we should encourage recovery and recycling of waste. Now we have a blueprint and a plan through various measures like MSW charging and producer responsibility schemes and other community campaigns. We want to encourage local recycling. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my question is, waste which should not be sent to the incinerator should be taken out. And have you done that? Secretary. Now, as my colleague already answered, there is a process at the incinerator. We have visual inspection, and we also have some operations to sort pick out metal. And this is in line with international practices. Mr. Lee Chuk-yen, 9th round. About Cheung Kwan O, previously I talked to the residents. They are aggrieved because they have reasonable expectations that they just needed to put up with it for a bit longer, and then they would not have to put up further with it. Chairman, I don't know if you agree with their reasonable expectations. They have been putting up with it for many years after moving in Cheung Kwan O. Of course, you would say that no odor will be generated from construction waste at Cheung Kwan O in the future. And there is also another issue with vehicles causing dust, emission and noise, and they're also very concerned. Of course, you would say that you have implemented a lot of measures to mitigate these problems. But ultimately, they are asking this question: why can't you close down the landfill for good? I don't know whether you have thought about it, or are you going to talk about the 15 hectares only? Cheung Kwan O residents are so dissatisfied, and there is wide repercussions in Cheung Kwan O. And last time you talked about waste recycling. Now, if you're so minded to go ahead with the 15 hectares, then can you address their reasonable expectations, do away with the 15 hectares and implement proper waste recycling? Well, I don't have enough time. Secretary. In fact, Ms. Lee's question has been put time and again. As my colleague explained, in the past decade, through various channels, we already announced the proposed extensions of the 3 landfills. That is because all 3 landfills have to be expanded. Mr. Leung Yu-jong, 6th round, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. The Secretary already answered at previous meetings that the landfill will be expanded, but the extended part will be away from the residential area, and that residential should not be affected. Well, we told you about odor, about flies, and you just now told Mr. Albert Ho that you put fly papers there for a test, and only some 30 flies were stuck, and it's far away from the 300 fly standard of the FHD, so there is no problem. My question is, how long have the fly papers been put there? Have you considered the difference, the seasonal difference in summer and in autumn? Because we understand that flies mostly occur in summer. So how many tests have you conducted? And when was the last time you conducted the test? When you said that there were just some 30 flies. Dr. Chen. In March, we installed we put up the fly papers, and we do the test on a regular basis. On the problem of flies, according to experts, it's because of a change of weather. So we have to pay particular attention to that. We also need to cover the pits more properly. So you talked about the number of flies, not too many, but it just happened for a number of days in a month or what? Can you tell us more details? Dr. Chen, we inspect it every day. we have 9 stations with fly papers, and we have colleagues checking how many flies get stuck there. So on average, 30 flies, do you mean that? No, I mean different areas, different places have different number of flies stuck on fly papers, the maximum being 30. Mr. Yip Kwok Kim, first round.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Gary Fan mentioned about Rule 33A. I am a chairman of the Committee on Members' Interest, and Mr. Gary Fan quoted many times 83A. Well, Mr. Gary Fan is also a member of that committee. On the 30th of November 2012, we put out a paper in relation to members not allowed to move a motion or speak when he has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest on an issue. So clear explanation has been given in that paper. So I want to quote from that paper. The rules of procedures do not specify clearly that under what circumstances when members scrutinize a bill or speak on certain issues, and if he has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest, the member shall, on his own initiative, make a decision on whether he has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest on issues deliberated on by any panels, and in assessing whether he has to declare such pecuniary interest, the committee has adopted the following principle, and that is whether other people would reasonably consider that this interest will affect the members' speech and decisions on these issues. So the pecuniary interest must be related to the member's personal interest. So this explains why the chairman has been saying that it is up to the members to decide whether he has a pecuniary interest, and it should be the member who has to take the initiative to make such a declaration, and that interest refers to direct or indirect pecuniary interest. So it is not for the chairman to say that a member has or does not have a certain interest. So that's what I want to explain in relation to the decision made at the subcommittee or the committee. Mr. Raymond Chan, 7th round, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to raise a question about Changguan-O Landfill. The odor problem is a great concern to residents, and the administration has answered the question many times, but then residents are still unhappy, and ultimately the government said that only construction waste will be taken in by that landfill. Of course, there is no odor problem, but there are other problems associated with construction waste. Now, some members said that the fees for disposing or treating construction waste is rather low. And does the government have any policy in relation to reducing the fee on construction waste? Now, if you can't have control on private waste construction collectors, but has a government calculated the amount of construction waste produced by public projects and which has to be dumped at the landfill? Do you have any plans to reduce the amount of construction waste? Well, Mr. Chan, many members have asked the same question many times already. So please, the administration, please give a quick answer to that. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chan, for your question. For construction waste, for public works,
we said that we must give exact quantity of the construction waste, and also we have to see whether there are ways to reduce the volume, and we also cover inert construction waste in that regard. Well, do you have any plans to ask public works project holders to reduce the amount of construction waste generated? For public works, we do have some internal requirements. For every project, we ask colleagues to explain why a certain amount of construction waste is generated, and is there any way that they should reduce it, or every department is obliged to do that. Dr. Kwakaki, 2 minutes. Secretary, in your paper, you said that after August 2013, and you met with the district council in September only. You never met with the residents, and in May 2013, you just went to meet with the district councillors, and you never actually met the residents. You've never had the courage to face the residents. Well, what the member said is incorrect. It's not what happened. So can you, point out my mistake? Give me the locations and the time that you met with the residents. Well, we resorted to a number of ways to meet with the residents, sometimes through the rural committees, district councils, and so on. Well, please don't take up my time. Don't waste time here. Chairman, well, in this chamber, people are watching us. At what happens in the chamber. Well, I think we can have a discussion here, lay out all the facts here at the chamber. Well, can you give us the exact time? You don't even have the courage to tell us the exact time. After September, when you met with the district councillors, you never met residents. And for NENT, May 2013, it's been 1.5 years. You've never met with the residents. Tarpaulin residents accused you of not meeting with them. Never meeting with them, and you tell lie after lie. How many more lies do you plan to tell? I don't think the member is correct. In our paper submitted to the electrical, we said that after the 23rd of August 2013, we held over 10 meetings with residents. Tuen Mun, some 30 times. North District, over 10 times. Sent Southeast NT over 10 times. Well, this is our information laid out in the paper submitted to electrical members. Mr. Frederick Fung, 10th round, 2 minutes. Well, this same question has been raised by many members last time, and the secretary didn't give us any answer. Perhaps I put my question in another way. According to paragraph 9 of the paper, it is said that the Zhangguanou landfill, after expansion, will continue to operate for another 6 years, and the Sent landfill should become saturated in 2015, and then you need 2 years to expand it, and then on top of that 6 years, and that takes us to 2023. So what happened in the period from 2015 to 17? Well, then you said that there would be more construction waste which would be dumped there. Then you suddenly said that the landfill will only be saturated in 2017. Now, well, you can turn 1 year into 3 years, and then 6 years you can turn that into 18 years. So if you are talking about a deviation of over 1 year, can you be mistaken in your calculation? So you haven't given us the final answer as to exactly when the landfill will be filled to capacity. So is the 6 years period a realistic figure? Well, even if you put your question in another way, well, that will not work either. I think you are repeating your question, and the question has been asked for over 10 times, I believe. Well, let's not try to repeat the question. You said that The Secretary refuses to answer your question. Your question is on whether the landfill, the lifespan, will be extended up to 2023. So, Secretary, why don't you answer my question? What's the reason? Thank you, Mr. Feng. The sand landfill can take in construction waste for 6 years, but then it will also depend on whether there is a change in the volume of construction waste in the next 5 years. If there is a 10% increase in the volume, then the lifespan will be cut by 1/6, and well, this is how we calculate. Now, Mr. Feng, you are taking up everyone's time. Well, the same question has been raised for over 10 times, so it doesn't do good to anybody if we keep repeating questions. Next one, Dr. Kwakaki, 9th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, we fully support the government's reducing waste and boost recycling. Last year, there have been media reports saying that the recyclers appointed by the government, well, many of the recycled articles have been transported to the landfills ultimately. And the government has been spending a lot of money in appointing these recyclings, but then it is not doing a good job in monitoring them. So in the past year, what have you done? What monitoring work have you done to ensure that our public funds are appropriately spent and that these unscrupulous recyclers are not putting the waste to the landfill and that they are putting the recycled products into constructive use? How come that the government is tacitly consenting to what they're doing? Well, two things that you are asking, Dr. Kawakaki. Your question have nothing to do with the funding application, and the same question has been raised before, and the government has already answered it. So I don't want government members keep repeating the questions, and then you accuse me of taking up your time in ruling on that. Secretary, on this particular issue, we have actually worked together with FEHD to try to root out the problem and to renew the contracts. Ms. Emily Lau, 10th round, 2 minutes. Member asked, why is it that the government refuses to give an exact time on closing down the sand landfill in Chengguano? So we want to know when the government will conduct a review on the charges for dealing with construction waste. If you charge them a higher fee, then there will be less construction waste. Second, you have to improve the transport records. You can use the real-time online barcode system so that you know exactly that the construction waste is actually transported to the landfills and it is not being dumped recklessly. So if you don't work on that system, then you won't be able to give us an exact day on when the landfill will be shut down. And as in the last meeting, the Secretary said that we have already started the review on construction waste charging, and the next year we hope that we can report back to the panel. Well, it's already November, Chairman. When will they come to the panel? Well, it depends on the progress of the review. Well, it seems that you don't know a thing, so no wonder you don't know when the landfill will be shut down. I think you gave us a timetable last time. It's not that you don't have a timetable, right? We've answered the same question many times already. In the first half of next year, within this legislative session year, we will be presenting the proposal to the panel. Well, Dr. Chen just said the end of this year, and then you said that next year. Well, we said that we have already started the dialogue with the stakeholders on the trades, and we have started the review, and we are collating the views, and then we will submit a proposal to the panel next year. Gary Fan, 11th round, 2 minutes. Secretary, Assistant Director of Environment, I queried Mr. Abraham Shak and also Mlang Singh's sort of interest in the matter. And does the EPD or the administration know whether there are sort of a conflict of interest between the operators of the landfills and the members here, especially the FC members? Do they know that there is a relationship between these two parties? Can you give us a very simple answer, yes or no? Mr. Nang Sing is a non-executive director of Smart Tongue under Sung Hong Kei, and also the Far East, and also the director of the Far East Landfill Technology Limited under Sun Hong Kai. Does the government know about this? Well, as far as we know, in the tendering of our contracts, we will ask the tenderers. Well, this is not my question. Do you know whether the members here have a relationship with the contractors or the operators of the landfills? Do you know? Yes or not? Well, this is not one of the considerations for our awarding of the contracts. Do you know? Yes or no? Well, they are not willing to answer. They've already answered you. You may not like their answer, but they've already given the answer. So my question is, can you solemnly and seriously give me an answer? Over the years, does the government know about this relationship? Well, you can't speculate whether they are being serious or not. Well, you don't have to answer on their behalf. I'm not answering on their behalf. Do they know or not? Yes or no? Do they know about this? Chairman, we haven't asked the companies to provide the names of their non-executive directors, so there is no way that we can know or otherwise. Mr. Frederick Fung, 11th round. In May 2014, at the Environmental Affairs Panel, the administration said that the government will try to safeguard the health of the residents nearby. And on the 31st of July 2013, the government started to build a monitoring station at Isar Chik fire station on the roof to test the PM 2.5 level, and there no problem is found. But then the community bodies are doing similar tests at the street level, and they found that there is a great problem. Now, if you are trying to test the impact on people's health, of course, you would take a test at the street level instead of going to the rooftop. I asked last time the same question, and the administration, and I asked whether the administration, whether you can say that the tests conducted by the community bodies show inaccurate results, but then the administration refused to answer. Has the administration considered doing a similar test at the roads, at one pole row, at the street level? Well, you've been repeating your question on tests of air quality. There has been established a mechanism or approach internationally, considering the height and the width of the location and so on. I'm not sure about how the community body goes about doing it, but as far as we understand, the community tests are not up to standard. Would you be doing the tests at the locations chosen by the community bodies? I think what we are doing are up to standard. Well, you are doing the tests at the rooftop, but then a person, well, who walks on the street, well, we're talking about a level of, say, 5 to 6 feet above ground. Well, we should not be discussing on how to carry out tests on air quality. All I can say is that the government is doing everything to standards. Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, 9th round, 2 minutes. Mr. Gary Fan, you don't have to be so angry. You said that in the tendering exercise, you don't know about the non-executive directors of the tenderers and so on. And now we're telling you that, well, these there are people, the members who are non-executive directors of the operators. Now, from a policy point of view, do you think that there is a problem there? If someone makes a report, would you consider checking on the cases? Now, so many members can have the right to vote on the funding application. So policy-wise, how would you consider that such a situation? And there is also another environmental engineering company which sort of has close relationship with the member here. Well, if we can't monitor you properly, then that's going to be a big problem. So do you think you should offer us an explanation or what, Mr. Chen? Well, I thought the gist of the problem is whether the members should declare conflict of interest here. But as far as our arrangements are concerned, we don't see any conflict of interest. The tender has been awarded, and we deal with everything according to the contract.
Mr. Leung Kok-hong, members may vote for or against an item. I think you have come up with a lot of mechanisms so as to prevent conflict of interest. Now, I want to know whether you prefer them refrain from voting so as to make sure that everybody can perceive that the administration is clean. Emily Lau, the 11th round. I was asking a question about construction waste, and then a review was said to be being conducted. So what about the trip system? Will it be real-time, online? Now, you haven't got such a system. In other words, you can't really penalize anybody for not sending the waste to the designated facility. Mr. Chen, in our paper, we don't talk about having a online system. Exactly, I'm trying to know whether you are going to introduce this facility so as to deal with it. Haven't you heard about it? So is it the case that sometimes the waste has not been sent there? They just dumped it elsewhere. So are you aware of the problem? The Sen. Please switch on his mic. Mr. Chairman, for government contracts, we do have a very vigorous monitoring system. Probably the member is talking about a practice in the private sector. I think you would recall that earlier this year there was a new piece of legislation so as to regulate what happened in the past. There was a lot of flight tipping of construction waste in new territories. Now we have come up with a piece of legislation to tighten up the control. Now for the review of the charging scheme for construction waste, we are trying to see what other measures can be adopted so as to reduce the waste. We want to increase the charge, and we hope that there will be other facilities and initiatives to tie in with the effort. Sorry, Dr. Chen raised her hand. Sorry, Dr. Chen. I think the Sen has already given an answer. That is, for flight tipping, we do have a new piece of legislation to address the problem. Your time is up. Please wait for your following round. Gary Fan. I'm not as capable as you, long hair. Now let me talk about incinerators and their classifications. I think we should learn from the experience of the country of Sweden. In Japan, 80% burned and then 2% landfilled. For us, we are quite unhappy because 50% of our waste is being landfilled. Now, in the future, about 17% of waste will be incinerated. So do you have any effective measures? You only talked about visual inspection. You said that you weren't sure about the effects in relation to incineration. Why aren't you following the overseas experience so that you have relevant laws? Now, in Japan, they have combustible and non-combustible waste, and then in Sweden, they have got 9 different categories of waste so as to deal with the waste sent to an incinerator. Why can't we follow suit? Do you have a timetable? If you don't, why not? Mr. Au, let me answer briefly. When we look at the figures in Sweden, they don't have full recovery. The recovery rate is about 50%. The rest goes to incineration. Now I want to know, why aren't you introducing the rules or as to mandate that the waste sent to the incinerator will be of the specified type? Well, according to, they would follow the EU directives. And then a word about the technology. We can deal with different kinds of waste. For Sweden, their technology is also the technology that we are proposing. Why don't you copy their practices as a whole? I'm not saying why we haven't got the rules right now, but why haven't you got a plan to do so? Please give a quick reply. In the coming days, we are going to enhance our efforts to recover waste. They're talking about rules and procedures, and then you refer to the case of the EU. You seem to say that they didn't have a law, at most they were just guidelines or directives. They don't have a law on incinerators. So in EU, they've only got directives, not a law. Let me supplement. Even for our blueprint, we would like to follow the common practices overseas. That is, other than enhancing recovery, we would like to have the producer responsibility scheme. That would also call for the need for legislation. Once we have the responsibility system in place, then certain wastes don't get accepted at landfills nor the incinerator. KK Phone, the 12th round, 2 minutes. I've got a paper with me, and that's from Sai Kung District Council, the Housing Committee. Please take a look of paper 20/14. It's a paper from EPD to the Sai Kung District Council. From September 2013 to 2014. It's about the data concerning PM 2.5. For the WHO, the average value for 24 hours, it should not be more than 25 in the US, or not more than 35. Adopting such as the yardstick, in November 2013, we have 90 days in exceedance, and then using WHO standards, and then 69 days in exceedance for the US standards. And then in the following year, 112 times in exceedance of the WHO indicator, and then 56 days in exceedance of the US standards. Dr. Chen, we did answer this question in the past. We did make it clear to the Sai Kung District Council. For PM 2.5, 60 to 70% come from a source outside of Hong Kong, in particular in the winter season. We are subject to the airflow, so it's not just in Sai Kung that the PM 2.5 level is higher. In fact, that's true for the entirety of Hong Kong, even true for the entirety of the Pearl River Delta region. Can you separate the sources, how much from Tseung Kwan O and how much from outside Hong Kong? In our table, Tseung Kwan O ranks about middle. And then for other roadside monitoring stations, we have got 3 of them, general air quality monitoring stations, 12 of them. For Tseung Kwan O, the value is round about in the middle. KK Fung, I think you're repeating yourself in the past few rounds of questions. It doesn't mean much. I think your time is up, but it doesn't mean that you can ask the questions time and again. In the first place, it has got no direct relationship with the question before us, which is landfill. Kenneth Chen, for the 3rd time, 3 minutes. Thank you. Paragraph 17 and paragraph 18 of the paper, the 2 of them are related, and they are about the following. That is, in preparation for the incinerator, the administration has visited the district councils, that is the island's district council, and they've consulted the stakeholders, they've listened to the views, and then they went to Macau together so as to pay a site visit, so as to look at the incinerator in Macau. Now, if I may take this opportunity to clarify a few points. Now, first of all, for the incinerator and the reclamation, that has been our concern. But in paragraph 7, there is also a question about making compensation to the fishermen, but we don't get sufficient information to form a judgment. That is, other than the funding request of $19.2 billion, what else should be taken into account as well, so as to judge the total cost of the project? Understand that the reclamation is going to take away 31 hectares of waters. That is the habitat for the Phineas porpoise as well as the fishing grounds. And what is the government's policy for the impact on the marine life? I know it is going to be permanent. What should be done to act as a compensation? Please tell us so that members can understand how much will be set aside to compensate for the loss suffered by fishermen. Please turn to paragraph 33. It isn't about compensation for sea, but it's about EGA, ex gratia allowance. For the fishermen and the mariculturists, there will be a EGA. Paragraph 33 gives you the exact figure. I'm not going to repeat it. Other than the EGA, do you have the acceptance of the stakeholders? Or will it be the case that if you find any other environmental impact or fishing impact, there will still be a chance for stakeholders to make use of the various schemes to come back to you and tell you that the compensation offered is not going to meet the needs, and then they may come up with unanticipated requests. Don't spend over a minute's time to ask your question, because that would affect the progress. Well, we have got an interdepartmental working group under the FCD to follow up on such matters. Leung Kwok Hong. The 10th round, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Just now, officials told us that they would launch the producer responsibility scheme so as to deal with the question of incinerator. Whether it is a piece of law, it doesn't matter. If you think that it's going to work for construction waste, why aren't you applying the same principle? Because construction waste can be dumped at a low price. Certainly, they will send it to Changguan O. So the logic isn't sound. In future, you're going to introduce the producer responsibility scheme, but you don't have it now for construction waste. I think if you have more refuse transfer stations, then they will have more diversion capacity, but you're not going to do that. My question is, it seems that you're out of your mind. Why aren't you having the producer responsibility scheme for construction waste right now? I think you asked the question many times, and other colleagues have been asking the question many times. I just want to tell everybody that I have this responsibility to urge you not to repeat the questions, otherwise we will be wasting the meeting time. I just want to know about the policy principles. The question has been asked. I answered a similar question 2 meetings ago. Now we have the volume-based construction waste charging scheme. 95% of the construction waste have been recycled. Only a small amount is left for landfilling. So the volume-based charging scheme proves to be effective. But then to further ease the burden on landfill, we need to have other measures in place as well. Emily Lam. Again, I want to talk about waste reduction at source. Just now, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong talked about the producer responsibility scheme. Now for plastic containers, packaging materials, beverage containers, rubber ties, wooden materials, batteries. I want to know whether the administration has got a timetable so as to introduce a producer responsibility scheme for all the types of waste that I have mentioned, so as to make sure that we can deal with them only after they've been recovered. Well, we do have a review timetable. There are 2 stages. First of all, for the larger quantities, say for example kitchen waste, and then for incombustible waste like glass, we have got different plans for them. And then for the next stage, we are talking about smaller quantities like wood. It takes up a very, very small amount of space at the landfill. And we want to work through the recovery park, the eco park, to enhance the recovery. I asked many more types, but he would only talk about wood. What about plastic containers and beverage containers? I was citing examples. In fact, in our blueprint, I've already talked about the timetable for the reviews. Please tell us when. 2017, 2018, that you will be delivering your job or what? According to our blueprint, about 2 years later, we'll start a series of reviews concerning the PRS for different materials. You only start reviewing in 2 years' time. Probably your grandson will grow up before we see anything done. How can you expect us to support your plans? We have got 3 PRS. For which we are actively drafting the bill. It's a lot of work, and then we will also deal with other smaller quantities of materials. Raymond Chen, I hope the Sen would keep calm. Now, we are worried that you have the will, but you don't get the job done. You try to reduce construction waste, but maybe developers just don't want to listen to you. That's why I've been focusing on construction waste. I think it's a matter to prove whether you are determined to do so and whether you can do so. For things that you can you can have it done yourselves, then you should do it first. Dr. Chen has said that you are in control of the public works contracts and you can reduce the amount of waste produced. I think my question was very specific. Do you have a waste reduction plan? If not, why not? Can you not sort of introduce a waste reduction target for construction waste generated in public works contracts? Dr. Chen, well, we have different kinds of works, like road widening, and then we may have to fell the trees, and then we may have to form a site. So it will be difficult to come up with a uniform target. However, for all our works departments, whenever they carry out a works project, they have to carry out an internal examination, and we must have a D2 or above officer examining the waste management plan, and then the details will be included in a PwC paper. Raymond Chen, I think the Sen would like to answer your question. I think we need to listen to each other clearly. Please be clear about the effectiveness of our construction waste reduction effort. It is already 95% in relation to the recovery rate. All around the world, it is already at a very high level. It is an average figure. I think for public works contracts, the rate is even higher. Your time is up. Please don't engage in a dialogue among yourselves. I think this question has been asked for more than 10 times. You may not like his answer, but even if they can do it up to 101%, you will still be unhappy and still go after him. But I have to say that this has been repeated many times.
Mr. KK from 13th round. Still, I'd like to talk about RSP, because when construction vehicles travel along the road and during the process of landfilling, RSPs may be emitted. And I'd like to follow up on this point. Now, the administration once undertook that some air quality monitoring stations would be installed in Tseung Kwan O, and it was expected to be commissioned in 2015. I'd like to know the progress. Which stage are you at? Design, construction, and has monitoring aspect anything to do with this funding application? Thank you, Mr. Fong, for your question. For the general air quality monitoring station, we have identified a site in Tseung Kwan O. It will be completed by the end of 2015. It's not linked to this funding proposal. It has to do with another sum of funds. One monitoring station, Chairman, because Tseung Kwan O at present do not have a regional monitoring station. We have one in Causeway Bay, one in Mong Kok, one in Central. So I'm not a Sai Kung district councillor. Please tell me where the site is. The site, if I remember correctly, is somewhere near a sports ground, but I'm not too sure. I can supplement the information later. This is under another colleague's purview. Now, RSP affects public health, and residents living near Wanpo Road are most likely to be affected. I don't know whether this monitoring station would be somewhere near there. Normally, the criteria for choosing a location for the monitoring station are numerous, but that we need to look at the whole district. But there are lots of residential developments near that road. Mr. Albert Chan. Well, Chairman, you keep saying that members are repeating themselves, but in fact, we live by repeating our task. You wash up, you go to a washroom, you have breakfast every day, and we just repeatedly do these tasks. This is my philosophy. I'm an existentialist. Now, my question is this about the categories of waste to be sent to the incinerator. So far, I have not received any information from the administration about the 3,000 tons of waste to be treated at the incinerator. What is the breakdown? What in terms of glass, beverage bottles, etc., etc. Now, I have a long letter. Please take your time to answer me. I don't think you can answer me now. Now, about the carbon monoxide generated from the incinerator, the figure is staggering. It's 7,240 tons of carbon monoxide. That's from Appendix 2 of your paper. In Shenzhen, and another incinerator has been planned. It's similar to ours, with a capacity of 3,000 tons of waste per day. However, they only generate 208 tons of carbon monoxide per day. So with equal capacity of 3,000 tons, we generate 3 times more than our counterpart in Shenzhen. And if you compare this with the carbon monoxide generated in the at the airport in Tongchong, the CO emission again exceeds the airport. Now, nobody discusses at this point. Now, Secretary, every time I ask you a question, you just turn your head away and look at the one next to you. Do you really know the answer? Please put your mind to it. Please answer the question yourself. Don't ask the colleague next to you to answer. Why don't you ask your colleague beside you to be the Secretary? Secretary? Now, about the carbon monoxide emission, according to our calculation, it abides by our standards. Chairman, please ask Secretary to answer. Tell me, which ordinance are you citing from? What standard? I'm saying our counterpart emits 200 tons. We emit 3 times with the same capacity of 3,000 tons of waste. So please answer me, what way is the waste incinerated? Because across the world, we're all talking about reducing carbon emission. But now our CO emission is 3 times more than others. Secretary, do you really know the answer? Well, Chairman, I know what Mr. Chen is asking. Carbon emission, it has nothing to do with carbon monoxide emission. Mr. Albert Chan, your time is up. Mr. Albert Chan, your time is up. Press the button and wait for your turn again. But just now you said that I also repeat task every day. But what task we repeat every day is different from the conduct of the meeting for better efficiency of the meeting. So if members keep on repeating the questions, I may have to stop the meeting because we need to conduct meetings effectively. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang, 10th round, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Last time, Secretary answered me in relation to domestic waste charging scheme and construction waste fees for accepting construction waste at landfills, and that there will be further reviews to these fees and charges. Of course, the MSW charging scheme is not fully implemented yet. We had a pilot scheme, and based on that, you would further consider the charging scheme. So my question for the Secretary is this. You're going to set down a principle that is the MSW or domestic waste charges to be levied will be lower than the per ton charge of construction waste disposed of at landfills. That is, the fees for domestic waste disposal is lower than that of construction waste. Secretary, Chairman, we're discussing with the industry, and there are two major considerations. One is the polluter pays principle. The other is the levels of fees to be charged for domestic waste in comparison with other types of waste. These are the two major considerations we're giving. Chairman, for construction waste, it's charged at $120 per ton at landfills. According to the pilot scheme on domestic waste charging, is about $500 per ton, according to scholars. So, Secretary, can you tell us exactly, roughly what level would the charges be set at? We're still reviewing the rates, and we're still discussing with the industries about the disposal fees at landfills. Is about $190. So this will be the indicator for our review. Next, Mr. Albert Chan, the 4th round, 3 minutes. Chairman, I don't wish to have a debate with you over our philosophies of life. Now, coming back to carbon matters. Now, Secretary, you said that carbon monoxide is not the same as carbon. What about carbon dioxide? Now, let me cite some figures from your paper about carbon dioxide. The figure is even more staggering. Maybe you have no impression how much carbon dioxide the incinerator is generating. It generates 1,447 tons of carbon dioxide, 200% that of carbon monoxide. For our Shenzhen counterpart, it's 250 tons, so it's 6 times more. I don't think you know the figures, right? It's like you're dozing off. With the same capacity of 3,000 tons, we're generating so much carbon dioxide. This is a topic of worldwide concern. Why is it that we emit 6 times more carbon dioxide than our counterpart? Well, since you're so good at carbon emission, please answer that. Secretary. Now, this topic of worldwide concern, carbon emission, in fact, there is a difference between the emission of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. We're following international best practices. As for the level emitted by a particular incinerator somewhere, I think we must compare our facilities with other facilities of the same level. Well, as the Secretary for Environment in Hong Kong, shouldn't you feel ashamed our counterpart in Shenzhen only emits 1/6 of the level of carbon dioxide as in Hong Kong. So don't you think that we are backward, that you should be shameful because we're generating 6 times more carbon dioxide and emitting 6 times more into the atmosphere than our counterpart? Will you go back and consider how you can reduce carbon emission? Secretary. Yes, we can go back and think about it, but as I recall, in the past, Mr. Albert Chan already cited other cases of other incinerators, and there was a misunderstanding. Well, my time isn't up yet, Chairman. Please let Secretary answer. Well, he's trying to twist my argument, trying to condescend me. Well, please, You've taken 15 seconds of my time. Well, it's up to me to decide whether I should give you back 15 seconds. I just want to remind you, I don't need you to remind me, Chairman. Although you're Chairman, this is my speaking time. I know how I should use my 3 minutes, and you spent 30 seconds of my time, Chairman. Next, Mr. Gary Fan. 13th round. Press the button, please. Press the button. Mr. Albert Chan, if you continue to shout from your seat, I'll have to ask you to leave the room. You Mr. Albert Chan, according to FC Procedures Rule 39, moves a motion to adjourn the meeting, and according to the rule, members can make a speech, but may not speak more than once, and shall not make a speech for longer than any time period as decided by the committee. And when no such decision has been made for not more than 3 minutes, please raise your hand and indicate your intention to speak. Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman, shouldn't I be the last one to speak? You still have a minute. Chairman, I move this motion that the meeting be now adjourned, because in terms of the incinerator, there are strong oppositions, and because the design is very problematic. I've actually dug up some information. Many members of the public are not happy with this design, and there are also members of the public coming from the professional engineering sector, etc. And I don't have the chance to go to Laohu Keng in Shenzhen, but many of them did. And we can look at the information. Phase 2 of the Laohu Keng incinerator is also very new. It's the construction cost was $1.8 billion, and whereas we spent $19.2 billion. And operating costs 1.6 for them, 1.6 billion for them, 1.4 for us. Capacity 3,000 tons. Secretary, from the figures I cited, we emit 6 times more carbon dioxide than others. We emit 1,447 tons, whereas it's 250 tons for them. And carbon dioxide emission affects the atmosphere and affects the whole world. And we emit 6 times more. Shouldn't we be ashamed? For nitrogen oxide, for us it's 1,447. For them, 199, and carbon monoxide as carbon dioxide, as I mentioned, 724 for us and 208 tons for them. What about our airport in 2011? With so many aircrafts taking off and landing, and we have the most severe air pollution in Tongchong between 12 and 2. The level of RSP is so high and air pollution is so bad that elderly people and children are recommended or are advised to refrain from outdoor exercise. Even for the airport, the annual RSP emission is just 58 tons. And this incinerator generates 217 tons of RSP, 4 times that of the airport. Sulfur dioxide for the airport, 304 tons. For our incinerator, 1,447. Nitrogen oxides. Well, the level for the airport is higher because of busy flight activities. That's also the same for nitrogen monoxide. Your time is up. Next, Mr. Gary Fan, 3 minutes. Today, Mr. Albert Chan's quote is that the repetition is the basic of existentialism. Now, Mr. Chairman, just now you kept reminding all members that your time is up, so and so forth. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong was admitted in hospital yesterday, and he is now here. So it's you, Chairman, who are repeating. Coming back to my question about producer responsibility scheme, if there are regulations in Sweden requiring all these items like rubber tire, plastic containers, beverage bottles, so on and so forth, be put under the PRS, then they could recover more. That's why they have a recovery rate of 50%. As for Hong Kong, the recovery rate for MSW waste is 48%. And we wish to raise the target to 90%. So we question why the government is relying on endpoint disposal facilities like the landfill and the incinerator instead of doing more to promote recovery and recycling of waste. And the administration explained that there are a lot of technical problems like lack of market for recycled products, etc. And the Finance Committee and the members here are trying to appeal to the government to do a better job. That's why there should be separate voting for the 3 landfills and the incinerator as well. Based on the unique circumstances and the background of each landfill and incinerator, separate voting should be made. And I understand that at least 2 members had conflicts of interest because of their other capacities. I only learned that yesterday, but the administration, during the tendering process, never asked the contractors to provide their list of NEDs. So you failed to consider it, but we have public mandate as LegCo members when we scrutinize these controversial funding proposals. The administration should also improve your mechanism. If in the future, following media reports, and to me these are potential conflicts of interest, you should consider in your system, make it clear to eradicate these conflicts. If members decide not to declare their interest, not to excuse themselves from voting, etc., I think the administration should do it. So I am against the funding proposal for the 3 landfills and incinerator. Mr. Lee Chuk Yan. Now, I'm not just talking about the 3 landfill extensions and incinerator proposal. I'm talking about the operation and the procedure of the Finance Committee's meetings. And Mr. Matthew Cheung said that for the old age allowance and the OALA, etc., they will be adjusted according to the CSSA, and he has no idea when the Finance Committee would come to talk about the adjustment. So the tactic you are deploying is a very irresponsible one. For the sake of saving face, you put the blame on other people, or you drag other people in, instead of putting our heads together and discuss the shuffling of agenda items. You deploy such tactics, and we don't know when other items would be discussed. and it's really disheartening. Why can't you discuss with us? Is your face so important you won't even discuss with us? Well, Chairman, you were once the middleman, and eventually things didn't work out. And we didn't need any middlemen. We could just put our heads together. Our position is very clear. We'd like to deal with items of priorities first. But the administration decided to go against us and withdrew some items, such that Chairman of the Public Works Subcommittee, that's Mr. Alan Leung, next to me, wanted to exercise his discretion to shuffle the agenda items. He couldn't do it because you withdrew those items such that shuffling would be impossible. So my question is it really because of your saving face? Is it because this is an executive-led government that you should continue in such a manner?
Of course, the pro-establishment camp would also point their fingers at us instead, saying that we are standing in the way. We want to be discussing with you on how to reshuffle the agenda items. Our non-cooperation movement or campaign has everything to do with the fact that the government is pitting itself against the people. We try to uphold people's welfare and well-being, but then the government is pitching itself against the people of Hong Kong. If you reshuffle the agenda items, we're definitely going to cooperate with you. Mr. Frederick Fong, I support the motion. Well, we started asking questions a couple of weeks ago. Well, we didn't do that before 2 weeks ago. You said, the chairman said that we have been raising our questions time and again, but then I don't see myself as repeating the questions. And maybe you have discussed the points at the Sai Kung District Council and the Environmental Panel Affairs meeting, but that has nothing to do with me. This is the first time I'm examining the issue. Now, Mr. Tong Chi-Wah, Mr. Donald Zhang, and the CE now has been telling us the different times for the exhaustion of the landfills. Then I asked you the question about the 6 years lifespan and whether you want to lengthen it to 16 years. You didn't answer my question because you are changing the stance all the time. Well, Chairman, you should have asked the Secretary to answer our questions instead of pointing your fingers at me. Well, if he doesn't answer my questions for 10 times, then he becomes a person who is handling the issue correctly. And conversely, the members are accused of being doing the wrong thing if we repeat our questions. Now, if the Secretary doesn't have the information, go back and try to retrieve the information and give it to us the next time. You can ask the experts to help you. Well, can you tell us here, clear and loud, that the lifespan of the landfill would just be 6 years, and then you will not be changing your stance all the time? Well, these are controversial issues which have been discussed for over 10 years. So how can you expect that you can deal with all the issues in, say, a couple of meetings? And Matthew Cheung said recently that he would be submitting his funding proposal for increasing the CSSA levels, and if he get the funding approval in December, then he can start distributing the new CSSA levels next February. Well, how can that be done? Matthew Cheung doesn't seem to know what's happening at the FC. Now his remarks are just there to pressurize the FC. So what is the executive doing? What are the secretaries doing? How come that you can't move the easier agenda items to the top of the agenda? Well, how come that those the items related to the livelihood issues, which are more important, cannot be advanced to the top of the agenda? Well, Mr. Frederick Fong, I have also asked the same question to the Secretary. Does it does the Secretary have sort of an end game, so to speak, in the terms of shutting down the sand landfill? Well, he can't give an answer. Dr. Fernando Zhang. The sand landfill in Changguano is very near to residential developments. Every one of us wants to know when you will shut it down altogether, so that it will not create nuisance to residents nearby. This is a reasonable request, but up to now, the Secretary couldn't give me an answer. So I speak in support of Mr. Albert Chan's motion to adjourn the proceedings. Well, the matter is so very controversial. Mr. Frederick Fung also pointed out that the government is changing the stance on when the landfills will be exhausted. And it also admitted that the plastic recycling rate in 2011 is 48%. That is half of the plastics in Hong Kong. But then he admitted that there was a mistake in this figure. And in 2012, the figure has dropped substantially to 39%. I think there is still, this 40% is still an exaggerated figure. Well, no matter it's the figures given to us and also the planning of the 3 landfills and incinerators, they're full of mistakes, and we simply can't trust them. I think the planning should meet with the overall interest of Hong Kong, and the nuisance caused to nearby residents should be minimized. Well, this is something that is not easy to deal with. There are other items which are more pressing in terms of timing, and they are not so controversial. For example, poverty alleviation measures like the subsidy, the low-income working family allowance, the administrative costs associated, and also the pay rise for civil servants. These are non-contentious issues, and we're more than happy to endorse the applications. How come that the government is using this proposals as your bargaining chips and then try to force through such contentious issues? Well, there are so many problems associated with such contentious issues, and then the livelihood, items related to livelihood issues are at the bottom of the agenda. Well, can the government consider afresh its approach? Mr. Alan Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Yesterday, we just received from the number 63 report from the Director of Audit, and it mentions about the new headquarters of the Civil Aviation Department. And over the years, it's found that when funding applications were submitted to the FC, there was this project of 1,500 square meters, but then the building did not adhere to the building plans, and public money was squandered as a result. And this shows a big problem, and that is when FC, on behalf of the members of the public, try to scrutinize funding applications of the government, if we are not careful enough, we will end up several years later with problems like those found in the CAD's new headquarters. So the administration should not try to brainwash people of Hong Kong, saying that electrical members are asking repeated questions, are trying to drag with asking questions. Well, back then, for the XRL project, when we scrutinized it, we asked questions why there was not a station on Kempshire Road. What about the Crown conditions? And are there worries that there will be overrun of spending and so on? Well, back then, the government gave us repeated answers too. Then, well, even if the chairman was saying that we were repeating our questions, but that wasn't a reason for us to give the green light for the project. Now, problem would surface very soon, just like what happened with the findings of the number 63 report released yesterday. So I support the motion to adjourn the proceedings. I know that next week, a group of people from the construction and engineering sector will come to to meet me as the chairman of the PWSC before our next PWSC meeting. They will hand in a petition to ask us to try to approve more projects. Now, today we can tell clearly who is standing in the way of construction projects. Well, the answer is more than obvious. Ms. Emily Lau, I support the motion to adjourn the proceedings. We've asked many questions, and we asked him what they would do to have reduction of waste at source. Well, if that job is done properly, then we can support you in your sort of end of pipe disposal treatment approach. I've asked several things: producer responsibility system, and he said that they are working on them as well, but then they didn't give us any timetable. And I asked a question about construction waste. He said that they're working on it and they are consulting, well, till middle of next year. So we aren't clear about when things will get done. I agree with the green groups asking that the government writes out in black and white as to the timetable of the various initiatives. Now, there is this recycling fund having an allocation of $1 billion. So how would that committee work? And they said that they will they will legislate and to make sure that people have recycling, and glass bottles, etc., should not have been deposited in landfill. So the green groups are asking all these to be done, and then the administration should also be updating the electrical regularly. Well, and if you do that, and then you come to us for funding on the end of pipe treatment approach, then then we are more than happy to give you the green light. And the secretary said that you have a blueprint. Oh, okay, we have the blueprint, but we don't have the timing. You said that you have, we will be consulting till the middle of next year, but then what will happen after that? Will it take another 5 to 6 years before anything is done? Well, we are here to help you, the secretary. I know that you have a difficult task. You don't have control over everything, but I can tell you that the electrical is here to help you and to help Hong Kong as a whole. If we expand the landfills, then we will attract a lot of criticisms. But then if we have a comprehensive plan on, say, aspects like reduction of waste at source and also MSW charging, pilot scheme, and so on, if you have a very comprehensive plan and present it to us, present to the community, showing your sincerity in reduction of waste at source, then we would be it will make it easier for us to support your endpoint proposals. Mr. Raymond Chan, some people believe that if we ask too many questions at FC, and we will be blocking or delaying certain projects, and project costs may go up. But have you ever thought about this? If we repeat asking questions, and then the government can do more on the reduction of waste at source, and you can sort of downsize your projects, and will it save money? A lot of people were suggesting that perhaps the scale of the projects can be downsized and they can be carried out in phases as well. And the chairman, you said that we are not happy with the answers. Well, if that is the case, then they should be sort of withdrawing their proposals. I focused on the question about construction waste produced by public works projects. I want to bring out one point, and that is the government is asking other people to cut down on construction waste generated. Well, it's up to other people as to whether they would heed your advice. But then for yourself, have you tried your best to cut down construction waste? The 80% of the construction waste now is being recycled and reused. What is these statistics related to the government construction waste? I want to tell you a story today. The government is not just not only reducing construction waste at source, but rather creating more waste. Now, along the Central Harbour front, there is this installation arts exhibition organized by LCSD, and they said that the installation arts work sort of complement very well with the harbour front. But then, after the exhibition, the artworks were treated rather pathetically, and all the artworks were transported and dumped in the landfills. And it shows that the government is not just not attaching importance to creative artworks locally, but rather it is taking the lead in generating waste. The students were not asked whether they would like to have their artworks back, but rather these artworks were treated as garbage and dumped. So have you taken the lead to educate other government departments in going green? And have you ever issued guidelines on how to for other government departments on how to treat waste? Well, the government is not trying to educate different departments to reduce waste at source. So whatever you do, it is not convincing. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Chairman, well, you seem to be agreeing to the fact that they are not answering our questions, and you consider they're not answering our questions and answer. Well, that's really outrageous. Yun Chao, you want to say something? Well, I'll let you have the chance to speak first. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, please continue. Okay, I will speak then. You said that they are not answering you, and that is considered an answer. And it's like this a group of soldiers not fighting a war because they are having this label saying that they are not going to fight. Now, way back, there was discussions on the Hong Kong-Zhuhao-Macau Bridge, and I asked, well, how come that Hong Kong should shoulder over 50% of the project cost? Then, after that, the ratio was reduced. The same goes to the link read. And they didn't give us a full good answers when we asked questions about the link read. And also the same goes to the securities and futures bill, and also XRL. But at that time, I was also suggesting that there will be cost overrun. And they said that, well, I'm trying to scare people with my remarks. But then this is exactly what happened. And I said that some of the facilities couldn't be put in place as well. One of them is the coordination of immigration co-location of immigration facilities at one place. So I said that that was not feasible. And then you didn't believe me. And then at the Kowloon Kai Tak, the environmentally the environmental monorail system, well, the same case. Now, Mr. Albert Chen was very agitated when he spoke. And you had to explain to us how come that there was this difference between Hong Kong and the mainland. Is it the case that the mainland people are doing a better monitoring job? Or is it the MPC can have all sorts of powers to remove ministers and so on? And I must say to Hong Kong people now, we are here to monitor you for some good reasons. So if you can give us a good explanation, so of course we are going to vote in favor of you. I said that, the government officials have given you the answers to your questions, but it's not the answers that you want. Let's take a break.